Listen closely. Evil doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it smiles. And sometimes it's sitting right next to you, quietly teaching you to doubt yourself while pretending to love you. Now let me tell you the first red flag, because this one is subtle, and that's what makes it dangerous. If the person next to you consistently makes you question your own reality, pay attention. I'm not talking about disagreement. I'm talking about erosion. The slow, daily wearing down of your confidence until you no longer trust your instincts, your memories, or your feelings. You say, that hurt me. They say, you're too sensitive. You say, that didn't happen that way. They say, you're imagining things. Over time, you stop asking, is this okay? You start asking, what's wrong with me? And that's the point. Because when someone feeds on your self-doubt, they gain power. They don't want partnership. They want control. They don't want truth. They want dominance disguised as certainty. Here's the hard truth: people with integrity don't need to shrink you to stand tall. Healthy people are curious about your experience. They don't rewrite it. They don't mock it. They don't dismiss it. When someone repeatedly makes you feel small, confused, or ashamed for having emotions, that's not love. That's manipulation wearing a friendly face. And the most dangerous part, you don't feel attacked. You feel broken. That's red flag number one. Let me say this clearly, because clarity is a form of protection. When someone believes they are entitled to hurt you, you are no longer in a relationship. You are in a power imbalance. This red flag shows up when your pain becomes inconvenient to them. When you speak up and instead of concern, you're met with irritation. When your tears are treated like a nuisance. When your boundaries are met with punishment instead of respect. You say, that crossed a line. They respond with anger, sarcasm, or silence. That's why. Because people with empathy feel accountability when they cause harm. People with darkness feel annoyance. Watch closely how someone reacts when you tell them they hurt you. Not later. Not after they've calmed down. In that exact moment. Do they listen? Or do they defend? Do they soften? Or do they attack? Do they care? Or do they minimize? Evil doesn't always look cruel. Sometimes it looks entitled. It sounds like, you should be able to handle this. It feels like, I wouldn't be this way if you didn't make me. And that's the lie. No one has the right to access you through pain. No one gets a free pass to wound you because they're stressed, angry, or just being honest. When someone feels justified in hurting you, they stop seeing you as human. They see you as a container for their unresolved rage. And here's what I need you to hear: your pain is not the price of connection. Love never demands suffering as proof of loyalty. That's red flag number 2. There is a kind of cruelty that doesn't raise its voice. It lowers it. It disappears. If the person next to you uses silence as a weapon, pay attention, because this is not peace. This is punishment. You try to talk things through, and suddenly they shut down. No explanation, no reassurance, just cold distance, messages unanswered, eye contact avoided, affection withdrawn, and you're left alone with questions that echo in your chest. You start replaying everything you said, everything you did, everything you might have done wrong. That's the trap. Healthy people take space to regulate. Unhealthy people take space to control. The difference is intention. One comes with clarity. The other comes with fear. Silence becomes their leverage. Because when connection is suddenly removed, your nervous system panics. You don't feel safe. You feel abandoned. And in that emotional free fall, you'll do almost anything to restore peace, even if it means betraying yourself. You apologize just to make it stop. You minimize your needs. You learn to stay quiet to avoid being cut off again. And slowly, you're trained. Let me be honest with you. Withholding love, communication, or basic human decency is emotional violence. It teaches you that closeness is conditional. That love must be earned through compliance. People with integrity don't disappear to punish you. They stay present even when it's uncomfortable. They talk, they repair. They don't make you beg for basic connection. If someone uses silence to dominate the relationship, they are not emotionally mature. They are emotionally dangerous. That's red flag number 3. This one is chilling because it hides in plain sight. If the person next to you seems energized by your confusion, that's not complexity. That's cruelty. You ask a direct question, and they give you a sideways answer. You seek clarity, and they accuse you of overthinking. You try to define the relationship, the rules, the expectations, and somehow you're made to feel needy for wanting basic understanding. But notice this, they are never confused when it benefits them. They know exactly what they want. They know exactly when to show up and when to pull away. They know exactly how much uncertainty you can tolerate before you start chasing answers. And that's the point, because confusion keeps you hooked. It keeps you guessing. It keeps you investing emotional energy just to feel steady again. When someone thrives in ambiguity while you're drowning in it, that imbalance is not accidental. Clarity threatens people who rely on control. Because when things are named, defined, and spoken out loud, manipulation loses its power. So they keep things vague, they shift the goalposts. They say things like, why do you need labels? Or let's just see where this goes. What they really mean is, as long as you're unsure, I stay in charge. Let me tell you something important. Clarity is kindness. People who care about you want you to feel secure, informed, and grounded. They don't enjoy watching you twist yourself into knots trying to understand where you stand. If someone repeatedly leaves you confused, unsettled, and emotionally off balance, and seems unaffected by it, that's not mystery. This one separates the wounded from the dangerous. Pay close attention to how the person next to you responds after they hurt you, not in the moment, but when the dust settles. Do they feel remorse, or do they simply regret the consequences? Because there is a massive difference. Remorse sounds like, I see how that affected you. I'm willing to sit with that discomfort and change. Regret sounds like, I wouldn't have done that if I knew you'd react this way. One takes responsibility. The other shifts blame. People who lack remorse don't grieve your pain. They grieve their inconvenience. They're sorry you're upset, not sorry they caused harm. And deep down, that absence matters more than any apology they offer. Watch for apologies that feel empty. Apologies that come with explanations, justifications, or a subtle reminder of how hard they had it. Apologies that disappear the moment you ask for changed behavior. Because words are easy. Character is not. When someone can watch you hurt and feel no internal reckoning, no pause, no reflection, no self-questioning, that's not emotional immaturity. That's emotional emptiness. And here's the painful truth: empathy is what stops people from crossing certain lines. Without it, there is no internal brake system. No inner voice saying, this is too far. So the harm repeats, and somehow you're always expected to heal faster than they're willing to grow. If someone can wound you and move on without carrying even a fraction of that weight, that's not strength. That's a warning. This red flag reveals itself the moment you say a clear, calm no. You don't yell, you don't attack. You simply name a boundary, and suddenly, you're the villain. They accuse you of being cold. Ungrateful. Disloyal, they act wounded, offended, or enraged by your self-respect, not because the boundary is unreasonable, but because it limits their access to you. Here's what's important to understand. Boundaries expose intent. People who care about you may feel disappointed, but they will still respect your line. People who feel entitled to you will experience your boundary as rejection, even betrayal. So they push, they guilt you. They punish you with distance, anger, or emotional withdrawal. They say things like, after everything I've done for you, or if you really loved me, you wouldn't need this boundary. But love does not demand self-abandonment. When someone reacts to your boundaries with manipulation instead of curiosity, they are telling you something critical. Your autonomy threatens them. Because boundaries take away leverage. They remove access. They restore your power. And that's intolerable to someone who benefits from you being overextended, overgiving, and emotionally available at their expense. Let me say this plainly. Anyone who requires you to betray yourself in order to stay connected is not safe. Your boundaries are not walls. They are proof that you are awake And if someone tries to make you feel cruel for protecting your well-being, that's not love under pressure. This is one of the darkest signs, and it's often the hardest to admit. If the person next to you seems comforted by your smallness, something is deeply wrong. At first, it's subtle. They joke at your expense in public. They interrupt you when you speak. They downplay your achievements. They roll their eyes when you're excited about something that matters to you. And every time, you feel a tiny collapse inside. But you tell yourself you're being dramatic. But over time, a pattern forms. You stop sharing your dreams. You stop celebrating your wins. You soften your voice. You make yourself easier to swallow. And here's the part that matters. They don't rush to reassure you. They don't notice, or worse, they notice and enjoy it. Because when you shrink, they feel bigger. When you doubt yourself, they feel powerful. When your light dims, their insecurity finally rests. People with goodness in them want you expanded. They want you confident, expressive, alive. They don't compete with your growth. They celebrate it. But someone with something twisted inside experiences your confidence as a threat, your independence as disobedience, your joy as arrogance. So they chip away at it. Not all at once, just enough to keep you manageable. Let me be very clear. Anyone who benefits from your diminished sense of self does not have your best interests at heart. Love does not require you to disappear. Connection does not demand that you dim. If someone feels safest when you are silent, unsure, and small, what they want from you is not love, it's control. This red flag lives in the space where accountability should be, but never quite lands. When something goes wrong, notice what happens next. Do they lean in and own their part, or do they twist the story until responsibility evaporates? People with integrity say, I was wrong. People with something darker say, yes, but there is always a reason, always a justification, always someone else to blame. If they hurt you, it's because you provoked them. If they lied, it's because you wouldn't understand the truth. If they broke trust, it's because they were under pressure. And slowly, without realizing it, you become the manager of their behavior. You explain it away, you soften it, you carry the moral weight they refuse to touch. But here's the truth most people avoid. A lack of responsibility is a lack of conscience in action. Taking responsibility requires humility. It requires facing the discomfort of knowing you caused harm. And some people will do almost anything to avoid that internal reckoning because it threatens the story they tell themselves about who they are. So instead, they rewrite reality, they minimize, they rationalize, they intellectualize their behavior until your pain sounds unreasonable. And the danger here is subtle. When someone never owns their actions, nothing ever truly changes. The apology becomes a loop. The behavior repeats, and you stay stuck in hope instead of safety. Let me say this clearly, change only follows ownership. Without it, patterns harden, harm deepens, and you're left waiting for a version of them that may never exist. This red flag doesn't show up when things are easy. It shows up when empathy requires sacrifice. At first, they may seem caring. They know the right words. They can mirror concern when it benefits their image. But watch what happens when being empathetic would mean slowing down, changing behavior, or giving something up. That's when the mask slips. You're overwhelmed, and they're suddenly busy. You're hurting, and they redirect the conversation back to themselves. You need support, and they offer advice instead of presence, because real empathy isn't performative. It's inconvenient. It requires us to sit in discomfort without fixing, dismissing, or escaping. People with empathy lean toward pain, even when it costs them comfort. People without it lean away, especially when your pain asks something of them. And here's the quiet devastation. When empathy is conditional, you learn to stop asking for help. You start handling everything alone. You tell yourself you're strong when really you're unsupported. Someone who cannot show up for your pain when it's inconvenient is not emotionally neutral. They are emotionally unsafe, because empathy is the foundation of trust. Without it, relationships become transactional. Your worth is measured by how little you need. Let me be very honest. Anyone who repeatedly abandons you emotionally when you are most vulnerable is teaching you that your pain is a burden. And once you internalize that message, you stop being fully human in the relationship. Now, take a deep breath, because this is where it all comes together. If you've noticed 1, 2, or even all 9 of these red flags in someone close to you, I need you to hear this. It is not your fault. You did not cause their darkness. You did not fail them by seeing it. And you do not need to state a fix. Evil doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it smiles. But it never grows stronger when you ignore it. It grows stronger when you doubt your own instincts and hesitate to act. Here's the truth. You cannot change someone else's character. You can only protect your own. You can only refuse to shrink, refuse to accept entitlement to your pain, refuse to let confusion, manipulation, and lack of empathy dictate your life. It takes courage, real, trembling courage, to name what you see, to say, I deserve safety, I deserve respect, I deserve to be whole. And it takes even more courage to walk away when the person beside you cannot meet those basic human requirements. Remember, setting boundaries is not revenge. Walking away is not weakness. Choosing yourself is not selfish. It is the most radical act of love you can offer to yourself. Look at the red flags, recognize them, trust your instincts, and then step into freedom, not anger. Step into strength, not guilt. Step into the life that honors your worth. Because the person who cannot see your humanity is not your responsibility. You are. Choose yourself. Always. That's the final truth, and that's the closing red flag. If your safety, sanity, or soul is in danger, your choice to protect yourself is the bravest thing you can do.